So it's always something with Demiris Dantas. And again, it's never really in her control. But it's always something. It's always something. And look, I cannot stress this enough. I cannot stress this enough.
Not one of the reasons Demiris Dantas has missed time with the Indiana Fever has been in her control. Not one. And right now, she's facing yet another obstacle that could derail the Fever's entire season before it even starts. She can't get into the United States.
And now, right now, she is currently not allowed in America. Yeah, she can't get a visa. This is not ideal. And as of right now, there are no, there apparently is no, like, timeline on her showing up.
Let's be clear about what's happening here. The Indiana Fever have exactly one backup center on their roster. That's Demiris Dantas. And as of right now, there's no timeline for when she'll arrive in America. None. The team doesn't know if she'll be there for opening night. They don't know if she'll make training camp. Stephanie White said she might arrive on Thursday, but Thursday came and went. Dantas is still in Brazil, stuck in visa limbo. This isn't a minor inconvenience. This is a structural problem for a team that just made the playoffs for the first time in years and is trying to build around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. You can't have Aaliyah Boston playing 40 minutes a night because your backup center is trapped in bureaucratic red tape.
To start, I don't know if she was ready for game 1 last year, but I think she might have missed the first game the last 3 seasons. And like, it is always a tough one when it comes to Dantas, because you're like, she was statistically one of the worst players in the league last year. And she hasn't done a training camp in 3 years.
Here's what makes this situation particularly frustrating. Dantas has already missed the first game of the last 3 seasons with Indiana. 3 years in a row. First year she was injured. Second year, her grandmother Iraliv passed away. Last season, she suffered a severe concussion that kept her out. And now this, a visa issue that nobody saw coming and apparently nobody planned for. The pattern is undeniable. Every single obstacle has been legitimate. Every single one has been beyond her control. But at some point, availability becomes ability, and Demiris Dantas has not been available.
Some idea about the visa process? And like, the New York Liberty have brought in players. You might be saying, oh, but like, certain players, New York Liberty have brought in players from everywhere. The New York Liberty have brought in Hanju, Marine Photo, Marine Johannes, Pauline Astier. Like, they brought in players from multiple continents. There have been players brought in from multiple continents.
Now here's where this gets complicated. Other teams are bringing in international players without these problems. The New York Liberty brought in Jonquel Jones from the Bahamas, Marine Johannes from France, Leonie Fibic from Germany, Han Su from China, multiple continents, multiple visa processes, and they're all in training camp right now. The Liberty figured it out. So why is Demiris Dantas the only player dealing with this specific visa crisis? That's the question the Fever front office needs to answer, because either they didn't do their due diligence on the visa process before signing their only backup center, or something went wrong that they should have anticipated. Either way, it's a planning failure.
And they're kind of hoping for the best. They're like, she's almost certainly not going to be, not going to be there for the game. Because Fever said, Stephanie White said, oh, she might be here on Thursday. But like, Thursday's today, she's not in America. So she's definitely gonna miss the first preseason game. And look, I'm okay. I'm actually okay. The more I look when it comes to Demiris Dantas, the more I look at like the going.
Let's talk about what the Fever are losing here. When Demiris Dantas plays for Brazil, she's their best player. Not one of their best players. Their best player, period. There's Dantas, then a significant gap, then Camila Cardoso. Anyone who's watched Brazil play international basketball will tell you the same thing. Dantas dominates for her national team in a way she's never replicated in the WNBA. That's what makes this so tantalizing for Indiana. They're not paying big money for a mediocre backup. They're paying minimum salary for someone who has elite potential. The upside is real. She can stretch the floor, she can bang inside with bigger centers, and she has chemistry with the players. The locker room likes her, the coaching staff believes in her, but potential doesn't matter if she's not in the building, and right now she's not in the built her at a minimum.
It's just unfortunate that they have no idea when she's coming over. Like, they have no idea, like, when she'll be there. They've no idea how she's, like, to be honest, I didn't think she played great in Turkey this year, but she was fantastic for Brazil. So you're kind of, I think when it comes to the Fever, you're like, look, we're not going to sign anyone crazy good for the minimum as a big. And look, we know Demiris Dantas, the team likes her. We know that she's somebody that can come in and give us 4 good games a season.
Here's the reality of the backup center market in the WNBA. You're not finding anyone better than Demiris Dantas on a minimum contract. You're just not. People have suggested the Fever should have protected Temi Fagbenle over Dantas in the expansion draft. Maybe that's true. A fully healthy Fever team with Fagbenle instead of Dantas possibly wins a championship in 20. But that decision is already made. The question now is whether cutting Dantas and scrambling for a replacement makes the team better. And the answer is no. Even with all her absences, even with her inconsistent WNBA performance, she's still the best option available at that price point. The Fever are capped out. They don't have money to throw at a proven veteran center. They need Dantas to work out. Which brings us back to the fundamental problem. She has to actually be in America for any of this to matter.
It's not even a debate. It's not even a debate. Like, Demiris Dantas is Brazil's best player by a lot. Like, there's no question. Like, I don't think anyone who's ever watched Brazil play basketball will tell you that that Camila Cardoso is their best player. Like, it's not even, for Brazil, it's not even a debate. Like, it is Demiris Dantas, large gap, Camila Cardoso. And maybe the Indiana Fever are like, look, no matter what, maybe she'll figure out how to turn into Brazil Dantas and become the best backup center in the league, which there's always a chance that can happen.
Think about what this means for Aaliyah Boston's workload. She's already one of the most physically demanding players in the league to defend. She's battling in the paint every possession, fighting for rebounds, protecting the rim. Now imagine she has to play 35 to 40 minutes a night because there's no reliable backup. That's not sustainable over an 82-game season. Wait, the WNBA plays 40 games. That's not sustainable over a 40-game season with playoff intensity. Boston needs rest. She needs someone who can give her 10 to 15 quality minutes so she's fresh in the fourth quarter. Demiris Dantas was supposed to be that person. She has the size at 6'3", she has the international experience, and she's played meaningful basketball at the highest levels. On paper, this should work, but on paper doesn't win basketball games. Bodies on the court win basketball games. And Demiris Dantas' body is currently on a different continent with no clear path to Indianapolis. So here's what this really comes down to. The Indiana Fever made a calculated gamble. They bet that Demiris Dantas could stay healthy, stay engaged, and recapture the form she shows for Brazil when she puts on a Fever uniform. That's not an unreasonable bet at minimum salary. The risk-reward ratio makes sense. But they also should have bet on having a contingency plan for visa issues. International players require international paperwork. That's not new information. The Liberty understood this. Other teams with international rosters understood this. The Fever either didn't understand it or didn't prioritize it. And now they're paying the price. Stephanie White is trying to build a championship culture in Indiana. Part of that culture is preparation. Part of that culture is having answers before problems become crises. Right now, the Fever don't have answers. They have hope. They're hoping Dantas gets her visa approved. They're hoping she arrives before the regular season. They're hoping she's in game shape despite missing training camp for the 3rd consecutive year. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is what you resort to when your strategy fails. And make no mistake, Demiris Dantas has been unlucky. Genuinely, legitimately unlucky. Her grandmother passing away is a tragedy. Suffering a serious concussion is a medical emergency. Representing your country in international competition is an honor. These are all valid reasons for absence. But the visa situation is different. The visa situation was preventable. The Fever knew they were signing a Brazilian player. They knew she'd need work authorization. They knew the timeline for when she needed to arrive. So why are they surprised right now? Why is there no backup plan? Why is Stephanie White telling media maybe Thursday when Thursday has already passed? This speaks to a larger organizational issue. The Fever have made tremendous strides in the last 2 years. They drafted Caitlin Clark. They built a young core. They made the playoffs. They hired an experienced coach in Stephanie White. They're doing a lot of things right. But the details matter. The unglamorous administrative work matters. Making sure your players can actually enter the country matters. Because here's what happens if Dantas misses significant time. Aaliyah Boston gets worn down. The Fever lose games they should win because they have no interior depth. Other teams attack the paint relentlessly knowing there's no backup rim protector. And by the time Dantas finally arrives, whenever that is, she's behind. She hasn't practiced with the team. She doesn't know the offensive sets. She's not in rhythm with Caitlin Clark's passing. She becomes a liability instead of an asset. That's the nightmare scenario. And right now, that nightmare scenario is looking increasingly likely. Now, should the Fever cut Damiris Dantas? Absolutely not. That would be a panic move that makes the situation worse. She's still their best option at backup center, visa issues notwithstanding. But should they have better communication with her representatives about the visa process? Yes. Should they have started this paperwork earlier? Yes. Should they have a clearer timeline for her arrival? Yes. The frustrating part is that Dantas has shown flashes of brilliance for Brazil. She's not a lost cause. She's a talented player who's been derailed by circumstances beyond her control. But at some point, the Fever have to ask themselves, how many circumstances can we tolerate before we need someone who's just available? Think about it from Stephanie White's perspective. She's installing a new system. She's trying to maximize Caitlin Clark's Rookie of the Year talent. She's developing Aaliyah Boston into an all-star center. She needs every practice, every scrimmage, every training camp session to build chemistry. And her backup center is stuck in Brazil with no arrival date. That's not a small problem. That's a foundational problem. Because if you can't trust your backup center to be available, you can't trust your rotation. And if you can't trust your rotation, you can't compete for a championship. So what's the solution here? The Fever need to be in constant communication with immigration lawyers. They need to expedite every piece of paperwork. They need to have Damiris Dantas on the first flight to Indianapolis the moment her visa is approved. And then they need to have a crash course ready to integrate her into the system as quickly as possible. But they also need to acknowledge that this situation was avoidable. The New York Liberty didn't have these problems. The Las Vegas Aces didn't have these problems with their international players. The Fever are the outlier here. And being an outlier in a bad way is not where you want to be when you're trying to compete for a title. The question for Fever fans is this: how much patience do you have left for Damiris Dantas? She's been injured, she's dealt with family tragedy, she's represented her country, and now she's stuck in visa limbo. All legitimate reasons, all beyond her control. But at what point does the accumulation of absences, regardless of validity, become too much? Because Aaliyah Boston can't play 40 minutes a night. Caitlin Clark can't will this team to victories without interior depth. The Fever need Damiris Dantas on the court, contributing, being available. And right now, she's none of those things. Through no fault of her own, perhaps. But the result is the same. So let me know in the comments. Do you still believe in Damiris Dantas? Or is it time for the Fever to find a backup center who can actually show up? Because right now, showing up seems like the hardest part.